Hi, my name is Kevin. I received a living kidney donation. It was actually 14 years ago today, and it was actually from a non-family member. And it was actually a preemptive transplant, so I was able to avoid dialysis completely. My kidney failure began when I was diagnosed in January of 2001 with polycystic kidney disease. And my doctor, my community doctor, told me that I would be going renal failure somewhere between 3 to 5 years. I was able to work all the time up until my preemptive transplant. I was fortunate that I was never on dialysis, so that was a very positive thing of being able to avoid. Having the preemptive transplant 14 years ago has changed our life in so many ways. I mean, first and foremost, I've been able to participate in our family and to see our children grow up. I've got our 2 children now are in college, and I think the other part too is that I've worked also in the field of kidney transplantation and also in the area of kidney disease. So my transplant led to a career change, which has been very fulfilling. When my nephrologist told me that having a living donor, or in my situation, a preemptive transplant was the best option, I really felt I had won the lottery. I wasn't aware. I thought you had to go through dialysis to have a kidney transplant. And then when my doctor informed me the best treatment option for me was having a preemptive transplant, I really felt that I really had been given the lottery, and I felt very optimistic about my future. Initially I found it very difficult to talk to family members and friends about my situation, the fact that I was in need of a kidney transplant. My wife, Kathy, really helped remove those barriers by taking the lead and by talking to other people and inform them of our situation. And then through her example, that began to make it easier for me to have conversations with people, just to inform them of my situation and to, remove the fear that had really paralyzed myself. I was scared that I was putting a big burden upon people by, having a conversation, and that I was potentially putting them at risk by having them to be considered as a living donor. So, initially that was a barrier for me to have conversations with people because of the fears that I thought could happen. When my donor Christine told me that she would be tested to see if she was a donor, I just kind of took it as nothing. I didn't really take the comments really seriously, or nor did I even realize that she was going to end up being my donor and actually being a 4 out of 6. So I kind of took it in a very casual sense when she offered to be a donor. I had a lot of questions about, how the living donation process would affect the donor. My biggest concerns were about insurance and how would it affect their health long term. So I did have a lot of questions, but at the end of the day, I put a lot of confidence in the transplant team and the professionals that they were. I try not to get my hopes up too much about the woman Christine who was offered to be a donor, because I was just really nervous about what happened if she didn't qualify, and I didn't want to set myself up for a big letdown. But and I was also concerned too about her making this decision, but she reassured me that she wanted to do this and that this is something that was very important to her. We both learned about the living donation procedure, and probably the 2 things that are most surprising to me was the fact that it was done laparoscopically, which enabled her to be discharged from the hospital within 3 days, and the fact that living donors tend to outlive the general population because they're screened so heavily to make sure that they're healthy, and that their health is the number one issue in the process, to make sure that no harm is done to them. When the day of the transplant, when Christine, my donor, and I went to the operating room, we really were both at peace with it. We were both very relaxed. I still remember we were kind of laughing and joking with the transplant team, but we really just had a deep sense of peace about the process and the journey that we both were facing. The transplant, I think, took about 5 hours total, and I was in the hospital for 4 days. Christine, my donor, was discharged in 3 days. And, that was about it. I would say I began in about 2 days. Actually, the next day after the surgery, I started walking around, and, I went home and was discharged after 4 days. And I immediately felt better after the transplant. I could tell the kidneys were working, And I felt, my health was restored. And I would say probably in about 3 months, I went back to work and really began to feel like myself. Fortunately, I've never been on dialysis, and to me, that's the greatest gift I could have after seeing what my mother and her sisters went through in dialysis. And so, to me, a life without dialysis has really meant a life of freedom. I've been able to work the entire time from 14 years ago, and it truly is the greatest gift that I relish every day, and especially today, 14 years after my transplant. It's been 14 years to today since I've had my living donation from Christine, and I really feel good. I just got done working out. I work out a lot. I feel like an active and contributing member to society, and I really do feel great. The relationship that my wife Kathy and I have with our donor is really kind of hard to put in words. They're beyond just being friends, but I would just say it is that. It has been one of the most powerful things that have happened in my life. It's just been such a powerful act of love and really has changed my whole direction of my life and how I view life. My favorite memory of this transplant journey, I would say that the time right after the transplant, after I had the transplant, was home, was probably one of the happiest times of my life. It was just such a beautiful period of being the beneficiary of love and of teamwork and everyone working together, and all I had to do was just be the beneficiary of that. And I still think about that time often. I think about this day, my transplant anniversary, all the time. Today's a very special day for me, and it's just beautiful. I just want to say thank you to my donor, Christine, because without, obviously, her generosity, I wouldn't be here. But just more beyond just the generosity of that gift and the restoring my physical health. It was such a beautiful gift of emotional healing, and her decision really changed the whole direction of my life and how I live my life. So I can really never thank her and her husband enough. My advice to others who are in need of a kidney transplant is just to be open. Be open to people that want to help you. Be open to a spouse or a friend who can serve as your rational voice during this time of uncertainty. And don't be afraid to let people know that what your situation is, and to be open to receive the help from others, from the transplant community, and from many people out there that you're not even aware of that want to help you in this situation. So be open, share your story, let people know what's happening, and be active.